Welcome to Season 2 of the Shooters Only podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Cadiz, alongside co-hosts
Darren Jung
and Garrick Garcia. We'll bring you the latest NBA news and hottest basketball takes every single week. Fantasy sports, NFL, the MLB, we'll sprinkle that in for you too. No matter the sport, we have the data to back up our opinions. And like my boy Klay Thompson says,
shooters keep shooting.
Hope you enjoy the episode. Season 2, Episode 2 of the Shooters Only podcast. Brandon Cadiz here alongside Darren Jung and Garrick Garcia. Make sure to follow your boy Brandon here on TikTok, Brandon C_FR, for some NBA fantasy basketball advice every single week. You know, trying to get your waiver wire pickups of the day on there every single day. And I'll let the guys shout out their social media handles for you all to follow as well.
Yeah, shout out to Brandon's TikTok. Even though he's in my same fantasy basketball league, I've definitely used a couple of his tips to get waiver wire dudes.
Yeah, shout out those tips because I wasn't looking at some of those Spurs guys too hard earlier on, but now I'm kind of hoping they can do some stuff for me possibly if I want to pick them up. But if you guys want to follow me, it's BigNasty_Raps. Got to promote my music, might as well. So shout out to that, I guess.
And make sure to follow us on Instagram at Shooters Only Podcast. We're going to be talking about the blockbuster trade, of course, with James Harden going to the Nets. Also talking about Kyrie Irving and if he will come back, our NFL picks, and make sure to stay at the end because we have a guest practice player on the St. Mary's women's basketball team and friends of Darren and Garrick. He'll be talking about some Warriors basketball and also maybe a little bit about St. Mary's women's basketball in there as well. But let's jump to, as we do every single week first, our Western Conference and Eastern Conference NBA players of the week before we drop into the blockbuster trade. So we'll start off in the Western Conference, and Luka Doncic is your player of the week, helping the Mavericks go 3-0 as he scored 30 points, 12 rebounds, and 11 assists for that week. And also yesterday with Kristaps Porzingis coming back, I think he scored 14 points, hit 3 or 4 three-pointers in limited minutes. And the Mavericks are looking to improve their record, and they're looking good so far.
Pretty impressive stat line for a guy I think looks pretty out of shape. It looked like Luka thought the season was going to start in February rather than December, but that just shows how good he is if he's averaging, a 30-point triple-double, and it's leading to wins. So with the addition of Kristaps, it looks like the Mavs are right on track for a season that's going to meet expectations at least.
Yeah, and I think they've gotten a little help defensively too, as we've mentioned in past episodes. Just with Josh Richardson being there now, I think Dorian Finney-Smith has always been a pretty good defender. He seems to be stepping up to the plate somewhat for them. And I feel like Luka's still got a lot of guys who can just help him score, but I still think they could use maybe a third guy. But obviously Luka's amazing as always because he's just that guy on offense. His threes haven't been going down as much this year, but you could see just the amount of high difficulty threes. He's a crazy playmaker. So even though he's taking those high difficulty threes, he's going to make some of those for you. And he's a clutch god, so it's good to see him doing that.
To speak to Garrick's point about the improved defense, I'm going to bring up some numbers right now. Where do you guys think the Dallas Mavericks are right now in defensive rating in the whole NBA after being in the 20s last year?
Are they just right outside of the top 10? I'm going to say 12th.
They're number 2 right now in defensive rating, right behind the Los Angeles Lakers, averaging 105 points per 100 possessions. So,
and with Kristaps back, you're going to get those block numbers up there too. So they might be competing with the Lakers for 1A and 1B.
And they're also, let me check right now, top 10 they're 15 in offensive rating. So I think that's going to definitely go up with Kristaps. So this is a team that's 6-4, and I think we all think is going to be looking at maybe a top 5 seed the rest of the season, the way the numbers are playing out.
And I know you guys probably caught a little bit of a glimpse for Kristaps yesterday in limited minutes. He was supposed to start on Monday, but with those games in the NBA being postponed to COVID, had a solid game yesterday. Again, I mentioned he hit 4 3-pointers, 16 points in 21 minutes. And yeah, he looked pretty solid for his first game.
Yeah, biggest thing
Yeah,
for him is just staying healthy.
yeah. With Kristaps too, you just have a guy who's obviously 7'3", and he just opens up the floor so much for you too, and just gives Luka another reliable shooter and some guy who can take some pressure off of him. So having him back is going to be a big lift for the Mavericks. I'm thinking they could be a team that surprises a lot of people. Obviously, we know how good they are, but maybe they could have a run like the Nuggets last year, something similar to that. Tough at times to get over the hump because it doesn't seem like they have that third guy necessarily just to always take pressure off. But they could have a guy who just has a breakout performance every now and then in a 7-game series, and that could really make them a force to be reckoned with.
Can I throw out a name for that third guy that I think they might be buying at the trade deadline? A guy that
Sure.
was in the James Harden trade, Victor Oladipo, expiring contract. I think the Rockets are trying to be bad and just get a good pick. So, and I think Oladipo would be a great fit next to Luka just because of his defense and outside shooting.
Yeah. I mean, that would be great if he goes there. You got to move on to the Eastern Conference Player of the Week, and that's the Boston Celtics. Jason Tatum, 33 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, a 3-0 record for the Celtics. 40 points, 27 points, and 32-point victories. Wins over the Raptors, Heat, and the Wizards.
I mean, he played great. I mean, it's a shame he got COVID though, because it looked like he was on quite the run there, averaging 33 points.
Yeah, I remember him and Bradley Beal last year had that stretch where they were the only guys in the NBA to I think average over 35 for maybe a week or two. It was something insane like that. And I don't know what they're doing in St. Louis. I don't know if it's the water. I don't know if it's that good home food soul cooking. I don't know what they're doing, but those guys produce some ballers. And Jason Tatum, I know we say it every year, and he probably already kind of did it. He's probably looking ready to make the leap and really be a top 10 guy. And I think right now, that's going to be the thing that could really put the Celtics over the top, obviously. Not to mention his running mate, Jalen Brown, who was actually outscoring him a little earlier on in the season just by point 0.3 or point 0.2 points, granted. But at the same time, if those two are the dynamic duo they could be, I'm kind of seeing shades of, Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady up there for the Raptors, but a better version, if you will. So I like a lot what I'm seeing in Boston, even though I'm a Lakers fan.
Wow, that's some impressive comparisons there with Tracy McGrady and Vince Carter. That'd be nice. That'd be nice.
I mean, I think they've
Um,
already gone farther than both those guys, right, in the playoffs the past couple of years.
I mean,
Not the
Tracy McGrady.
disrespect to the six.
You gotta come down there with the Tracy McGrady. Tracy McGrady in his early years, he was pretty hard to guard. I think he was, very 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 hard to guard, but also used his body a lot. Completely different duos, but I think I see what you're trying to say. We We'll move on now to our big news yesterday, the trade of the NBA season, and that was James Harden going to the Brooklyn Nets and joining Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. The full trade here, we'll give it to you. The Rockets get Victor Oladipo, Dante Exum, Rodion Kurucs, 3 Brooklyn first rounders in 22, 24, and 26. The 22 pick is unprotected, and they also have the option of swapping with Brooklyn with those pick swaps in 21, 23, 25, and 27. The Nets just get James Harden, and the Pacers and Cavs were also involved in this deal, with the Pacers getting Karis LeVert and a second-round pick, and the Cavs getting Jarrett Allen and Taurean Prince. A lot to dissect here, guys, but we'll get your initial reaction.
I know Brooklyn. On Twitter, it seemed like Brooklyn was getting a lot of flack for giving up too much. But when it comes to a guy like James Harden, who is, in my opinion, at least a top 8 player in the NBA, you do this 10 times out of 10 because you have a top 15 player of all time in Kevin Durant. He's 32 in his prime. He's only got a couple more years left in his prime, and you'll probably never get a player like that again in the next 20 years at least. So you're maximizing Kevin Durant's prime, and I think this is the year. The next 2 to 3 years, you're going for that title heavy.
Yeah, no, to your point earlier, Darren, just about how much they gave up. I've seen some people make fun of them, saying this is kind of like when the Nets first moved from New Jersey to Brooklyn and they traded for Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett and those guys, obviously. But this is not that. I don't want anybody getting that misconstrued because that's frankly just disrespectful, blasphemous, egregious, whatever words you want to use. I'm trying to expand my vocabulary because I usually just say disrespectful. But these guys are already shooting 39% from the field as a whole team. And, they're one of the top 4 teams in the NBA as far as shooting threes. They just added James Harden. And to me, that's extremely scary, obviously. And that's easy to say. But I saw their death lineup that they could possibly be running out. And Jeff Green at the 5, he did some pretty nice things for Houston. Those guys have already been clicking together. They've seen each other, him and James Harden I'm talking about now. And they still kept Joe Harris, and I thought that was integral too. Just the season he's having is pretty historic too, just as far as a marksman. So having that 5-out lineup is going to be scary, and they still kept DeAndre Jordan on top of all that, who we talked about could be a glue guy possibly, maybe just for the defense. He brings the hustle, the intensity, the energy, and hopefully Nicholas Claxton comes up too, because I'm excited for that, honestly. Those double teams, they're about to be real.
We have 2 great MVPs, former MVPs in the league here with Kevin Durant and James Harden. And,
MVP.
Just those 2 right there, there's going to be a question of who's going to – and it was trending on Twitter yesterday of who's going to take that Chris Bosh type of role, right? Who's going to be the one person that's going to regress down on it. And I did some advanced research. I looked at the usage rating of one of my favorite teams ever, the Golden State Warriors with Steph, KD, and Klay. And in the 2018 championship season, Stephen Curry's usage was 31, KD was 30.4, and Klay was 23.7. James Harden's lowest usage rate was back in the 2012 season where he had a 21.6 usage rate. His highest was in 2019 at 40.5. But the thing here is, I think it's going to be the obvious answer to this question is who's going to take that seat back and be the third guy? It's going to be Kyrie Irving, because in his career, he's averaged only a 29 usage rate. His lowest came in 2015 at 26, and his highest was last year when he had to carry that Brooklyn team with KD out and for the 5 or 6 games that he played. My point here being is that out of all of these guys, KD and James Harden and Kyrie Irving the most ball dominant, but I think Irving, with him being out and us not knowing when he's going to come back, it's going to be an easy transition for him to take that role back. This is definitely KD's team, and he's the one that wanted James Harden here in Brooklyn.
Yeah, Brandon, that's a great point. And I think even though it is KD's team, we've seen him play off the ball in Golden State and Oklahoma City especially Oklahoma City with a ball dominant point guard like Russ. So I think he'll have no problem taking a step back and playing a little more off the ball. And I think for as Kyrie being the third option, I think even as the third option, he's still going to be averaging 23, 25 points a game. So I think he'll still be happy because this team's going to average, I think, around 115, 120 points a game. So all 3 of those guys are going to be averaging at least 25, staying happy. And I think offense will not be the issue for this team. I think everyone's going to eat. That's how good all these guys are.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I'm worried about, honestly, is just I know the ball is going to be going around. Their passing was already, I believe, top 10 in the NBA as far as assists. Their field goal percentage, pretty good, obviously, too, high up there. And they're going to get more free throws, too, just adding James Harden. But it really is the defense, I think, to your point, Darren, because I'm looking at the team, and I don't really know who's locking anybody down on the perimeter. I think James Harden has gotten better as a defender. Those memes of him being a Shaq in the full MVP are long gone to me and kind of overdue. I think KD is a pretty solid defender now too, obviously. But I'm just wondering who's really going to strap up because I know Jared Allen, his defensive rating on the floor, whether he was a starter or non-starter this year, was 107.7 and 107.8. So in that sense, who's going to be that rim protector? Who's going to be that guy? I think that can be DeAndre Jordan. But I think he's also lost a step. And out on the perimeter, I don't know who you're looking to. Maybe you're looking to Bruce Brown. Maybe you're looking to somebody else. I really don't know who it is because they got rid of Torian Prince, who I feel like really fit that mold. Maybe it's Jeff Green, but I think that's the thing that really scares me. But this offense is just too potent not to win a lot of these games that they're going to have that could be dangerous defensively for them.
Yeah, to your point, Gary, I think a lot of the defensive load is going to lie on Kevin Durant because we saw him in Golden State. He was an all NBA defender. I mean, he could guard all 5 positions. He was probably their best rim protector. And he's going to need to dial that back in, I think, for this Brooklyn team because he's going to have to cover a lot for James Harden and Kyrie Irving. If they make the finals, I think he's guarding LeBron James every single minute of that finals if I'm Steve Nash. So it's just going to be a lot of pressure on a guy that's coming off a major Achilles injury. So that's the part that worries me.
Yeah, let's dive into Kyrie Irving because we saw a report on Twitter that he might, rumors say that he could sit out the year if he doesn't want to come back.
Man,
And for Kyrie Irving, we've seen him be problematic in the past in Boston and, wanting to leave LeBron there in Cleveland. And if he's on the move and it's just James Harden and Kevin Durant, of course, I like it. It's going to be the most lethal starting big three in NBA history. But I think the bench is also what worries me in addition to that defense. So are they going to have chemistry issues when Kyrie comes back? I think, the most obvious answer right now is yes, right? It's going to take them a while to develop that chemistry.
Yeah, and I think that's why the Nets were so quick to make this James Harden trade because of the uncertainties surrounding Kyrie Irving. And I think James Harden's Kyrie Irving insurance because even if Kyrie goes off the edge and retires or something, you still have James Harden and Kevin Durant. And those two are good enough to get you to the finals just by their sheer talent. So I don't know what's going to happen with Kyrie, but it seems like he's probably going to buy in just because you only have so many chances to win a championship, especially with this talented of a team. But, I mean, thank God they have James Harden, right? Because if it was Kevin Durant by himself, I think he's out of there in 2 years.
Yeah, Stephen A was saying that he thinks, not Kevin Durant, but Kyrie Irving should actually retire. And I was kind of shocked to hear that because I know Stephen A, he's the man with the most, the host with the most, has those hot takes. But at the same time, it was just very surprising given the talent he is. And as far as who's going to be the third guy, honestly, I was thinking about this. And personality-wise, I think it could actually be more so Kevin. I think he's the best player, obviously, but to Darren's point, he is pretty good at playing off ball just because, he's probably the greatest scorer of all time when you account for sheer size and his ability to create for himself on top of everything else. So in that sense, I think Kyrie and, James Harden could really have some back and forth there about who wants the ball. But my question, not what I was thinking about, Kevin Durant's been teammates with basically the top 3 guards, I'd say, in the NBA, point guards for the last decade or so. And do you guys think this big 3 is better than the big 3 that we saw with the Warriors?
Good question, Garrick. Are we including Draymond to make it a big 4, or are we just judging it off the big 3?
No, we're just doing Steph, Clay, and KD.
I think
The
Clay's
disrespect
just.
to Draymond.
I
but
said
yeah.
this. We mentioned this in our interview with Jordan, but I think Clay's just the perfect third guy because he doesn't need the ball and he also plays really elite defense. So I'd have to take the Warriors.
Yeah, to answer this question, on paper, offensively, I'm taking Brooklyn on this because you can't stop all that firepower offense, right? You got James Harden, and a man that's known to create his own shot, but not only that, is to draw contact, and he can come up with 20 free throws a game, or he can go with 15 and 10 free throws a game. He's just unstoppable when you in the paint, and you can't guard him that way. And you got Kevin Durant, basically a 7-footer that can hit a shot anywhere on the court in the paint. He can play that small ball center role that we've been rumored to be hearing in Brooklyn sometime. And also with Kyrie Irving, one of the best ball handlers ever in basketball history. And it's just tough there offensively. On paper right now, I'm going to have to take Brooklyn. We'll have to see how that translates on the court.
Are you guys how concerned are you guys of Brooklyn's bench? Because I think
very
on
concerned.
Twitter it's been overblown because during the regular season it's going to be kind of a load on those guys, but when it comes down to the playoffs, you only need 7 or 8 guys really for a full rotation, and you got those 3 elite guys. Joe Harris, DeAndre, Jeff Green,
Joe
Landry
Harris is
Shamet.
starting
And
though.
let's just call that a rotation right there, right? That's 7 guys I trust in a playoff series.
You're starting Joe Harris.
Yeah, I'm saying you only need 2 or 3 guys off the bench, right? So maybe Jeff Green, Shamet, and TLC, Timothy Luau-Cabarro, who played really good in the bubble last year. And they're going to get some buyout guys when it comes down to the deadline. So I think the bench concerns have been overblown a little bit.
Bruce Brown was nice. And I think like the bench is, I know what you're trying to say here, but we saw it in 2019 with the Warriors where they had that star firepower and the bench didn't get the job done. And that's the only thing that concerns me more than the actual defense, in my opinion.
So you're saying if one of those guys goes down, it's over?
Basically, you got to have those 3 guys healthy the whole season, as we saw with the Warriors in 19. And I think if we're talking about guys in the buyout market, another guy I'd like to see here would be PJ Tucker. If they're blowing that up in Houston already with other teams being interested in him, I think he'd be a perfect fit here in Brooklyn.
Yeah, if PJ Tucker goes on the buyout market, it's going to be an absolute frenzy for him because he's a guy that he's just a great player that's on winning teams.
I would even I don't think he's going to be on the buyout market, but if they're going to trade him away, I would give him Jeff Green and one other player here on the Nets and take him over. Yeah, I'd rather take PJ Tucker over Jeff Green.
One guy I want to mention is a guy I really liked in the draft, Landry Shamet, a few years back, because he hasn't really gotten too much tick, obviously. But I think when he's on, he's a really good shooter. And I think he could be a playoff guy. But we have seen that his defense has been somewhat suspect. I think he has the frame to be a decent defender, but it's just he seems not strong enough sometimes to handle some of those really dynamic 2 or 3s that sometimes he's matched up against, especially in the playoffs. But I think he's a guy who could really take a step up, hopefully, as just somebody who, is an elite shooter and has shown in the past glimpses of what he can be, both on the Sixers and the Clippers, who are pretty high-octane teams, obviously. So I think in that sense, he's another guy I'm looking out for. But I don't know. I think Nicholas Claxton, I really want to see him move up. I said it earlier. I'm going to say it again.
He's definitely going to get minutes now.
Please.
I mean, there's no other centers on the team, right, besides him and DeAndre.
Yeah, pretty much so. Jeff Green, if you count him as a center. But, yeah, I think somebody has to come up. You have to see what you have in the G League, and I think he's the most promising guy outside of Zana Musa. So we'll see what they have.
Yeah, he's there with that knee injury, and he's I think like 2 weeks. I'm looking at right now, out from practicing with the team. So yeah, he can definitely see those rotation minutes. And we saw a great game from Bruce Brown and Timothy Luau-Cabarro when both KD and Kyrie were out, with Karis LeVert leading the way. And we'll get into Karis in a few minutes. But I think Bruce Brown's going to also be a good factor here for Brooklyn. I like him over TLC. And yeah, it's just a bench that is concerning to me. But let's move on to another topic here and stay with the Brooklyn Nets before we talk about the other players in this deal. And that's a bunch of NBA players have done this for the past season. They're not happy with the team. They're going to sit out. They're going to act a certain type of way to get out of their contract. And it's concerning here. And Darren posted a great question off air. And that's, what's the point of a contract, right? Like if players have the autonomy to be able to just, act like a child and get traded away, do contracts really matter now?
I mean, I think it matters for the players because now if you're unhappy, you just take the hometown money and then you just ask for a trade. So players are now, you could get the best of both worlds where you're getting the financial security and you get to go where you want. And we saw that with James Harden and Anthony Davis. But just to play devil's advocate to that, I think it's just rare because those are 2 top 8 guys in the league, right? And not every player is a top 8 guy in the league. There's only 8 of them. So it is a little worrying because I think the way James Harden went about it was probably the worst out of any of the recent examples because he just totally disrespected the whole entire Rockets organization. But is it a concern to the league? Probably a little bit, just because if you're a small market team, you could be in trouble if one of your superstars is unhappy.
I think the more interesting thing to me, as far as the question, is the quantity. like how much is a contract worth per se? Because we know we talk about buyout guys, right, all the time. We talk about guys who are on 1 year expirings. Whether you have a player or team option could make something extremely different. Obviously, guys who you mentioned top 8, Darren, but guys who are really top 3 maybe get no trade clauses or whoever. And I think in this sense, we're seeing somewhat of a renaissance in the NBA just as far as there are no longer immovable contracts, it seems like. Whether or not that's the level of the player we're talking about or just as far as a commodity that you could hand off, it's very interesting to see because, we've seen Victor Oladipo move around really quickly, obviously. We saw another guy,
I mean,
James
with the
Harden.
Russell Westbrook for John Wall trade, those are two
Russell Westbrook,
absolutely
John
unmovable
Wall.
contracts that just got moved for each other.
Chris Paul got moved twice in the last 2 or 3 years. So in that sense, I think it's more interesting to see how these contracts are really valued, I guess, more so as opposed to, can players just move willy-nilly the way they want to? I'd say yes, but at the same time, it's also interesting to see how these GMs really treat contracts because we heard a guy like Danny Ainge. Boston should be a great free agent destination just because of their rich history. It's a big city. There's a lot of beautiful parts I've heard. I've never been personally. But, Danny Ainge doesn't treat his players the best. Apparently, he tried to trade Kemba as soon as he signed him for a max, or he was already shipping out deals that he could possibly do. So in that sense, is it wrong for the players to do what they're doing, do you guys think? Or do you think they're totally justified in what they're doing? And is there a line that you can cross, and has James Harden
I think
crossed
James
that
Harden
line
crossed
maybe?
the line. I think the way Anthony Davis went about it, where he only had, 1 year left on his contract, I have no problem with that. And you've given everything to the Pelicans. But James Harden, the Rockets, they built their whole team around him. Daryl Morey gave him all the firepower he ever needed. And this man just went to the strip
Oh,
club right before
I
practice, comes up
I
out
gotta.
of shape.
All right, this is me. I gotta call you out there with that 1 year left on Anthony Davis's contract, and it's fine because he's joining the Lakers. But when Kevin Durant has the autonomy of being a free agent and joining the Warriors, it's bad for the NBA.
You know what? I
That
was
is
I was
different though,
pro Kevin
because
Durant, Brandon, because he was a
I just
free
had to let
agent.
that out. I just had to let that out.
He had to get away from Russell Westbrook, and I don't blame him for teaming up with Steph Curry.
We
I think
okay.
it's just different in
Yeah, go ahead, Darren.
principle, though. That's the
This
big
is a
thing.
pro Kevin Durant podcast here. All right.
Whoa,
Okay,
whoa, whoa.
okay.
Don't speak for all of us at once, buddy.
Well, real quickly here too, uh, Gareth, you mentioned Boston and Danny Ainge too said that he was in talks there with trying to get James Harden, but their asking price was too high. Draft picks, of course, would have been involved, but he wouldn't get into the details of which players they were going to ship off. Probably Kemba Walker, but in terms of that, would Boston have been a better contender then if they got them, or was Brooklyn the right choice for James Harden?
Well, I was hearing on Twitter that the Rockets wanted a young player, so I'm assuming that was Jaylen Brown. And if I'm Danny Ainge and I hear that, I'm hanging up the phone right away because I think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are just two young wings you build around. You could sell that to the fan base, and they're just both so young. Don't sacrifice that for James Harden, who probably will leave in 2 years.
And Darren brought up a good question earlier also, just in the doc. He was just saying how it's basically, I think it's pretty true. The Rockets, I think they kind of got a steal in a sense. Not that you're replacing James Harden. Obviously, you can't do that. This is a 5-star type of player guy. Same way Kobe when he demanded a trade in 2007 or so. You really can't replace a guy of that level. But at the same time, they got a lot of assets back, obviously. But I do think they could have made better trades. I do think a trade with Boston would have been better. Maybe you get just a plethora of goods and Romeo Langford, Jaylen Brown, who knows? Just a lot of guys who look like they could be future scorers. I don't think you do that in Boston, but I think you have the capability to pull off so many trades just because of those assets you have. The Pelicans could have done something. I know they're not in the running. Theoretically, the Thunder could have done something, right? Just teams with a lot of assets. But I think the team that I was really looking at were really the Sixers and the Raptors to do something because I feel like they have a lot of leverage. They have a lot of contracts they could trade, a lot of big contracts they could match with James Harden. And they still have some assets as far as trade value with picks. So I think the Rockets did a good job as far as what they got back, but they could have done a better job with as far as who they got, that marquee guy, that guy you could build around. And I
Well,
don't
it
think
was
they
it
did
was
that.
well known Ben Simmons was on the table for the Sixers, and I think they were haggling over Tyrese Maxey, Matisse
Mhm.
Thybulle, picks. Like they're haggling over the outside stuff. But
Yeah.
did Houston
But
take the right deal if Ben Simmons was on the table? Because
no,
I mean,
they
all those
did.
first round picks, I don't know if you could sell me on that compared to Ben Simmons.
I agree,
Or even
Darren. And
Pascal,
because
right?
Yeah,
and
or even
because
Pascal.
and because of the pick there, you get those pick swaps, but it's not going to affect you in a good way because for the next couple of years, Brooklyn's going to be great. You're going to get those bottom picks there, so you're just going to have to stick with whatever pick that you're going to pick at for Houston. And if you do make that trade with Philly, you get Ben Simmons, Tyrese Maxey, and maybe 2 picks. And I'd rather take that deal. And also with Philly, that really benefits you because you're going to have that point guard center combo that I've been advocating, and because of how well I saw it work last season in the bubble too with Jamal and Nikola Jokic. And if you have a top point guard, top 5 player in the league, and one of the best centers in the league there, probably the second best center in the league with Joel Embiid, that was a dynamic duo that I would have loved to see if I was a Philly fan.
But to counter that, Brandon, if I'm a Philly fan, I'm glad Daryl Morey kind of stood his ground and said, you know what, Ben Simmons is all you're going to get. You're not going to get Maxey. You're not going to get Thibault. Like, I'm offering you a top 15 player that's 24 years old. Like, take it or leave it. So I respect Daryl Morey for, like, holding his ground and still keeping that young core together and not just blowing everything up for James Harden.
Free Ben Simmons, man. This man needs to be unleashed. He needs to score more.
Uh,
I don't know
uh,
why he's only scoring 13, but yeah, he would have been a great addition for them, I think, too.
so to answer the question, are the Brooklyn Nets now the favorite out of the East?
I know I was hardcore on the Milwaukee Bucks as the favorites out of the East, but I think I got to flip. There's just too much talent on this Nets team. Like, I know the defense is a question, the bench is a question, but if they're putting 120 points on you every night, like, how are you going to stop them?
I agree. I mean, I had the Nets going into it. I thought the Bucks would be the first seed in the East, but I thought the Nets were just, probably going to be somewhere between 2 and 3. I was guessing, but they were just going to be an unstoppable duo with Kyrie and Katie initially. So I'd say they have to come out of the East. And this is interesting too, because for all of our NBA historians out there, I believe it was 2002, so it might have been almost 19 or 20 years ago that the Lakers and the Nets actually faced off with Jason Kidd, Kobe, and Shaq. So we could see something like that again. Shout out Richard Jefferson too, because he was also involved in that and is a LeBron team, and he was talking a little trash to LeBron the other day on Instagram. So I'm all here for it. The storylines, they're lining up well for us if
Yeah.
you're an
I
NBA
think people
historian.
forget how good James Harden is. Like, as obvious as that sounds, like, this is a guy I think once he gets into shape, the pairing of him and
Or
Kevin
even if he
Durant,
doesn't,
yeah, or even if he doesn't, I mean, there'll be problems if he's not in shape, I think. But I think he will he'll buy in, and if he's bought in with Kevin Durant, I mean, does it even matter what Kyrie Irving does? That just those two alone is such a lethal combo.
And as we've seen
yeah, I
every
guess.
season, nothing's guaranteed. I did pick that Brooklyn was my favorite to win the finals with just seeing what Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving did within those first 2 or 3 games together. And with this move now, I'm absolutely securing that in with Brooklyn coming out of the East, and it's going to be Brooklyn and LA. Those are going to be the 2 teams that we see in the finals, and what a win for the NBA, because you see 2 teams in the top markets. They're in Brooklyn, New York, and down in SoCal in Los Angeles. That's something that you want to see. Of course, New York fans would like to see the Knicks in there, but sorry, it's Brooklyn's show now. But yeah, like we always said, nothing is guaranteed, and I just gotta use the sound effect. I just had to get that in.
Nothing easy.
So yeah,
Nothing
nothing's
easy.
easy, but lock me in Brooklyn, because what are the odds now, Darren? You have on Bovada you put down on here?
So they went from plus 650 all the way down to plus 275 to win the title. So they
Mm-hmm.
went from 60-1 to 27-1, just like that.
Man,
Insane.
all right,
They've over halved it actually.
we got to show love now to one of our favorite guys here, and that was Karis LeVert, included in this deal. He had a strong start to the season. One of the top players in the league. I think he was top 15 in usage rate so far this season, and even coming off of the bench for that Brooklyn team. He got traded initially to the Houston Rockets, but thank God they traded him out of there and he went to Indiana, and I'm loving it now. I'm loving this move for the Pacers because I got to see, I've been high on Domantas Sabonis, and watching that game as a Warriors fan taking on the Warriors and how Miles Turner, a block machine this year, really taking his game to another level with 4 blocks average per game. And with Malcolm Brogdon there, and now you add Karis LeVert, that's a 4-player tandem that I love for Indiana.
Yeah, I think that was a win-win
Man,
for
oh
both
man.
teams. Do you want to go ahead? I know Karis is your guy, Garrick, so I'm going to just give you the floor.
I'm so hyped right now. You can't hear it in my voice because I'm very monotone usually. But this man, Karis LeVert, they're already a top 3 passing team, according to the stats, these Pacers. And Karis LeVert just adds another guy who can facilitate and be, kind of ball dominant at times out there and a great scorer. I think Oladipo, he's a guy, sure. He was averaging 20, but Karis LeVert, his 18 and a half, don't get it twisted. I think this guy has a bigger bag, honestly, than Oladipo. I think Oladipo relied a little more on his athleticism. Karis kind of reminds me more so of a finesse guy. Plus his passing alongside, like I said, Malcolm Brogdon, Domantas Sabonis. I think it's going to be a scary trio, like you're saying, Brandon. And I'm really excited to see it, honestly, because I do think they lost a little defensively, just granted how good Oladipo is, but their offense is about to be off the rails. I think they could be breaking records as far as what they've done in Indiana in past years. And I don't know. I think it was 28-1 odds you said at one point for, I want to say, was it most improved for Sabonis? But man, that's about to jump
Yeah,
up
he
even
looks like
more
a
now.
lock for
I've
that
got to
right
put some
now.
money down.
I think it was
Facts.
a
The
win-win.
Pacers,
I was just going to say, do you guys think it was a win-win for both teams? Because I kind of like Houston getting Victor Oladipo, who is, a little bit of a distressed asset now, but I think he's, from the games I've watched, he looks super healthy, and he's an expiring contract, so you kind of get a look at him. And right now, I think he's a better player than Karis LeVert. And then the Pacers get a guy in Karis LeVert who's on contract for the next couple of years, so they don't have to worry about losing Oladipo. And you're getting about, 80% of Oladipo's production. So that was just a win-win on both sides, I think, for me.
Yeah, I think so, honestly, because on top of Victor, you're also getting Dante Exum, who I think he's just going to play a Michael Carter Williams
We're
role.
not
If
giving
you
up on
remember him,
Dante
like
Exum, baby. We still got Dante Exum stock from 2K15.
his defense is still pretty good, honestly. And, he can't shoot kind of like Michael Carter Williams, but he can just be a guy at the end of games that you might give the ball to run the offense. It could just be something interesting to do. Rondas Karooks kind of fits what they do as far as the Rockets and, spacing out the floor. He's barely done anything this year. He doesn't really get too much tick. But on top of adding Victor Oladipo and John Wall together, that duo might be the most athletic backcourt in the NBA right now. So I think that's going to be really fun to watch, honestly. Aside from just the basketball that we talk about, I think they're going to be 2 guys who are hyper dynamic. The only thing I'm worried about with them, specifically over a lot of other teams, is injuries.
Yeah, and also shout out to the Cavs for getting Allen for basically nothing, like a second-round pick. They're going to lay out the 5 center lineup, it's going to be amazing.
I'm grossed out, and I love centers.
Larry Nance at the 3. Let's make it happen.
Taurean Prince at the 1.
I think Andre Drummond is on the move there. I think when you have someone like Jarrett Allen that young and that much better on defense compared to Drummond, of course, just sucks up all the rebounds that you want also on the offensive end, especially. But I think I've heard rumors on Twitter that Drummond could be on the move, and then you keep Jarrett Allen. I don't know what the Cavs do, but I know that either Drummond or Allen doesn't stay there. I'd like for Allen to, of course, be moved out, but I think if you're the Cavs, you want that younger player in Allen.
Yeah, to your point, Brandon, do you think this is just them really trying to stay on a timeline possibly? Maybe you're also looking at moving Kevin Love once he gets healthy again, because we know he can be a 20-10 guy when he's going, obviously, just given how good he is. So do you think timelines are becoming more and more important in the NBA possibly? We've seen this with the Lakers wanting to get younger. The Celtics have kind of a good mesh of young and old for a while. So what do you guys say to that, I guess, as far as what you think?
Well, I like it because you got your 2 future franchise players there in Sexton, and then now you add Jarrett Allen there and Andre Drummond, that center. He could come off the bench again for Jarrett Allen. I would not like for his talents to be wasted on the bench. But as a six man off the bench, a really great defensive center, and if you can get that to work, then why not? We also haven't really seen Kevin Porter Jr. and his full potential there in Cleveland. So I mean, they got a young core there. I think the forward spots are what's concerning me there in Cleveland.
Yeah, that's enough Cleveland talk for now. My head's starting to hurt.
I thought they were your team 2 weeks ago. You seemed
All
really
respect.
excited
I mean,
about
they've been
them.
playing super well. I super respect Colin Sexton. He plays hard, and that's a
Yeah,
great
no, I
move
can
getting Jared
respect that.
Allen. How do you think
Yeah,
we're gonna
They're going
remember
all
James
big.
Harden, the James Harden era in Houston? Because I think a lot of people are kind of crapping on it right now, but he had a great run in Houston. I mean, I think they should have won a ring in 2018. They're probably the second most winningest franchise in that span to the Warriors. So I think despite all the playoff failures, we probably should remember his era in Houston pretty fondly.
I'll remember that, what was it, double overtime or overtime game against the Warriors where he hit that clutch three. That was amazing to see. I think my favorite moment, though, was when they missed 27 straight threes. That was probably my favorite moment with James Harden and the Houston Rockets, though.
To Brandon's point, this NBA franchise, the Oklahoma
Well,
City
let's be
Thunder, is feeling
nice.
kind of
Let's be
cursed.
nice. We don't have to go there.
Damn. Stephen A. Smith with the disrespect. But yeah, I don't know. KD, Russ, and Harden all seem to have a hard time really winning those rings until obviously KD went and got one of his own, actually two of his own, down there in Golden State. So I think in that sense, I don't know. Do you think these guys are cursed? Is the little B curse real? Are we bringing that back in
Well,
2021?
I think the great thing for Harden being on the Nets now is like he's probably the best player in the league the first 45 minutes of the game, but now he has a guy in KD that can really close for him. So I don't think he's gonna have to worry as much about being clutch when you got KD and Kyrie, who are, I mean, what, two of the top 5 clutch guys in the league.
Yeah.
I think
I'd
that's
say
huge
so,
for
yeah.
him,
Yeah,
especially
fun
down
fact
the road
on
in the
that.
playoffs.
I think I saw a stat earlier on ESPN with KD, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving in clutch ISO shots made. I think they were all in the top 15 with that. So that's going to be fun to see. Of course, we saw those 2 misses by KD and Kyrie earlier to win that game this season. But, they're clutch. So, yeah.
Yeah, James won't have to worry about being clutch anymore. You got KD for that.
And real quickly, when we talked about looking at players in the buyout market, and I've said this before just because Stan Van Gundy doesn't know what the hell he's doing there in New Orleans. Eric Bledsoe and JJ Redick, look out for Brooklyn to get them one of those two. And then also again with PJ Tucker, if they get one of those 3 players that I've mentioned, because it would make the most sense for New Orleans because we saw them finally let free of last night, and that's Nickeil Alexander-Walker when he had the career-high 37 points. Looked really good with New Orleans there, and if they want to get younger.
Tank City. They got to do everything they can to solidify those picks. And right now, I'm a fan of that, Brandon, because I really don't want Eric Bledsoe there as a big Zoe guy. We kind of have Zoe playing the shooting guard, it seems like, right now. And I think he's really debilitated
He
by
can't really
half
fill in
of
that
his
shooting
talent.
part of the position name.
Yeah, he's really only a guard. He's a big guard, right? We can't expect this guy to be clapping threes like he's James Harden and just taking all these step backs and stuff. That's not who he is. So I think in that sense, just maybe train those guys, flipping those guys, kind of to Darren's point. I still don't get the Steven Adams contract totally, but I don't know. I think they have a lot of assets and they just have to be smarter with what they're doing. And they definitely have to add more shooting, if not in the draft and free agency, but they got to do something.
So if we're talking about the next big trade, I think it's pretty obvious. Would we all agree it's going to be Bradley Beal is the next guy to be traded? And what are you guys thinking about possible destinations for him? Because I think Garrick brought up a great point about New Orleans if you're trying to actually win some games now. And I think if Ben Simmons is pissed off about being in trades, Philly can just pivot to a guy in Bradley Beal who's younger than Harden and might bring up less locker room drama.
Yeah.
What do you think, Brandon?
I'm thinking the Warriors. And let me tell you why. Because we saw now, we've been a couple games into the season, and Andrew Wiggins has figured it out. Kelly Oubre had finally a good game last game. I think when you're looking at this now, you have James Wiseman there, you have Kevon Looney, and you have that Minnesota pick. I think if you're the Warriors and you get desperate, you trade away that Minnesota pick, and you add on maybe someone off the bench like a Jordan
I think
Poole.
you need to put Wiseman, right? Wiseman in that Minnesota pick. That's the package.
That could be the package. And this is just me being a Warriors fan, but if there's a way that you don't throw in Wiseman there, that would be ideal. But I think some bench players on there too would be a good deal. We'll see what other teams do as well with that deal too. But I think, the Warriors are definitely going to be not the top destination, but one of the destinations. But I think, New Orleans would be interesting because if you're going to trade out Lonzo or Eric Bledsoe or JJ Redick in that deal, I mean, that's a pretty solid deal for me.
Yeah, not to mention all those picks from the Lakers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about Kelly Pascal and Eric Pascal in the pick, honestly. I think that'd be pretty interesting to me
If you're
because
Washington, though, aren't you just hanging up? Like, if James Wiseman's not in the conversation, aren't we just hanging up the phone and saying, come back to me later?
he already got Thomas Bryant there. You need your wings.
You
There's
are
going to be
right.
the return.
Thomas Bryant was nice.
The return to the district, man. The best looking player back on the Wizards. It'd be iconic. That's all I'm saying. It'd be inspirational, in the words of Flight. So that's what I would be looking forward to as a Wizards and a Warriors fan, if they could do something like that.
If Minnesota actually falls out, right, and they be the fourth worst team, they get that pick too, so they can draft someone. So that might be a good deal if they want a young player.
That's facts. They could get Jonathan Kuminga there or something. It'd be pretty good steal for them, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about Bradley Beal, though. This guy's averaging, 36 points a game? The least you could do for me if I'm Washington is throw in James Wiseman, because I think James Wiseman's a beast. And I think Ben Simmons is already on the table for Bradley Beal right this second, because I think Daryl Morey's trying to pivot real quick.
Those are 36 meaningless points until they get a win. I'm tired of the Wizards. I'm tired of the tomfoolery. I need Isaac Bonga starting at the 1 right now because whatever they're doing isn't getting it done. It's crazy out here.
Just considering that Harden package and the fact that Bradley Beal is only 27, I think that his price might be just as ridiculous as Harden. As crazy as that may sound.
No, because he's not a top 10 player in the NBA.
But he doesn't have the baggage, Brandon. I mean, this is a well-known good guy in the league, and he's 5 years younger and he's locked up on a extension he just signed 1 year ago. I mean, I could see the price being pretty crazy because right now he's the only guy also that's available for trade that's a superstar.
So do you think there's going to be more future 3 or 4 team deals possibly than there were in the past, maybe like 5 years or so?
Yeah,
I think
fair.
so. I think the new deal is just giving away all your picks now that it seems like teams just don't care about picks anymore.
Well, Michael Jordan to the Clippers.
That point there, Garrick, that just helps out the Warriors even more than if you just have to give up a couple of picks to other teams and a couple of bench players to get Bradley Beal.
That's true, honestly.
I like Denver. I would put Denver and Philly above the Warriors still. Just looking at trade package wise, if Denver's willing to part with Jamal Murray.
Yeah, I would put Denver. Philly, I don't like that for Philly. I would keep Ben Simmons over Bradley Beal. I don't think Bradley Beal and Joel Embiid would work together.
Do you want the greasy Lakers fan to come out, or do you just want me to hold this take so you're not annoyed on air?
Garrett, just let the take fly.
Let it out. Fly.
Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell.
Okay, get out of here. Get out of here.
Caruso, and whatever's left of the pick department.
Okay, this is not even credible. If you're telling me the Wizards are taking that deal over the Warriors, then it's over for the league.
THT right now would be the second best player on the Wizards behind Isaac Bonga. That's all I'm saying.
Stop it.
I'm a Lakers fan, but I already hate it here.
I don't know, man. 2 6 man of the year candidates, both averaging over 18 points. Trez is looking scrumptious, 61%. Dennis Schroeder's creating a lot by himself. He's 27.
Whoa, now. You got too much dip on your chip.
What he said.
Just for that, Brandon.
Whoa, now. You got too much dip on your chip.
Just for that, Brandon, you're not invited to my cookout this next upcoming weekend. It was only going to be 5 people because of the vid protocols, but still, you're not
Okay.
invited anymore.
Gun to your head, guys. Gun to your head. Is Bradley
Yeah.
Beal traded before the trade deadline? Or is he a Wizard for the rest of the season?
No, he's not. He's a Wizard for the season.
He's gone. He's gone with the wind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he might be gone pretty soon. It's looking dire. Poor Russell Westbrook too. He's just getting
so
passed around.
if I'm Brooklyn, do I have enough to trade for him?
Kyrie.
Irving for Beal. Yeah.
Oh,
no, you
that's
could
what I
do
wanted
that.
to bring up too. Is there a Kyrie trade in the works here?
Well,
For,
if I say yes
Brooklyn?
to this, then it's automatic. You got to trade for Bradley Beal.
Because I threw out some to you guys. I don't think they're doing that for Kyrie. He's too much of a distressed asset at this point. But maybe Kyrie for Aaron Gordon and Terrence Ross to the Magic, kind of bolster the bench and the defense at the same time.
Why would you want to go to the Magic though?
I mean, he doesn't want to, but if I'm Brooklyn, I'm saying if that's the return, pack your bags, you're going to Orlando, Kyrie. So that's a trade I threw out that I really like.
It's a gross trade, but it makes sense, I think, honestly, because
Mhm.
Orlando needs more scoring at all times. I know they've been good this year so far, but granted, we're only 12 games into it so far, so still 60 or so games to go. But they would be getting that marquee, obviously, big name, big face type of free agent or deal-breaking guy. So in that sense, I think it makes sense. And then Aaron Gordon, we were talking about this a little before, that he could just be kind of like a guy who fills somewhat of a Draymond role, obviously not to that level,
Yeah.
or like
I mean,
Julius
he's a great
Randle.
defender. He's such an underrated defender.
He's super versatile too, and when his threes are on, he's pretty solid from out there. He's just very well-rounded, kind of like maybe even like a Paul Millsap, but a little more athletic too, if you want to go that route.
Kyrie to the Knicks. He's on the wrong New York team.
I don't hate it. The Knicks need something to go right for them. I mean, they
For
look
what,
good
Julius
right now.
Randle and Mitchell Robinson?
And Alfred Payton.
Yeah, I don't know. Are we fully bought in on the Julius Randle
I am.
leap?
It's
I'm
just
fully
like,
bought in.
if the Knicks just do that, aren't they just getting Stephen Marbury again, honestly? That's what it feels like to me right now if I'm making that trade.
It would be Kyrie's dream. I know right now, I don't think he's really committed to winning that ring. I mean, he's had the opportunity to start off the season. He's not showing it in a good factor. So if they go down this road again and, all the Knicks fans can rejoice because Kyrie Irving's on the market.
Yeah, I could see that. I think he's just very focused, it seems like some of the social aspects of what's going on in America right now. So I guess that's really the deal breaker, and that's kind of what I alluded to earlier, just with Stephen A. Smith saying that he should retire. But
Yeah, he
I
should do
remember
what
even
Kaepernick's
before,
doing.
yeah, maybe I think if he really wants to, because he seems to be saying that that's his calling. And I remember even before this, he said he was a guy who was going to retire at 35 about a year or two ago in an interview. And I think in that sense, I could see him as, not a career guy where he plays 20, even maybe 15 years. I could see him being a guy who plays 12 to 13, just judging on his personality. And Brandon, I want to ask you this. Do you think the personalities are going to be the biggest detriment to the Nets? Do you think they could be a team like, these super teams we've seen in the past, ultra, super, hyper talented, but it just doesn't matter because there's just too many personalities. We got KD with the snitch accounts on himself sometimes. We got James Harden going to the strip clubs, and we got Kyrie with his head in the clouds. Do you think that's going to be too much to overcome?
I think they could get it done, but that's, as you asked me, is that going to be the main reason? And absolutely, because we saw what a little B word can do to Kevin Durant, right? From what Draymond called him out on. And then these other issues now with James Harden and with Kyrie Irving. And yeah, that's gonna be the factor. We talk about these super teams being created and having chemistry issues, how they will gel in on the court, but off the court stuff is gonna matter just as much as well. And then I just wanted to throw this in because I thought this was really funny that I saw on Twitter. But if you're in Brooklyn right now, I want you to look up the nearest strip clubs near the Barclays Center and invest in that stock right now, because with James Harden there, that's going to be your move.
Yeah, I think
They said the Houston strip clubs are raising his jersey up to half mast in honor of a fallen warrior in James Harden.
Yeah, I think the only thing that could put the value down right now, besides the vid, would just be if you traded a second for Jared Dudley and,
Mhm.
had the return back in Brooklyn. I think that's the only thing that's keeping it away because they need that team chemistry right now. They need some guy who's going to be in the locker room and be a
I think
presence
I'm
for
just
them.
worried about. I think Kyrie's the only guy I'm really worried about. Because I think at the end of the day, Kevin Durant and James Harden, they're all about basketball for the most part. Like, they're not too active on social media, at least Kevin Durant now. Yeah,
Yeah.
they kind of just stay in their lane and they're about winning championships. And I think James Harden is really hungry to win a championship because I think that'll solidify him as maybe a top 25, top 20 player of all time. So I think there's
Yeah.
no doubting those two guys. I think Kyrie's the guy that you got to worry about a little bit.
And
Speaking of,
before we, yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, speaking of championships, do you guys think this would be kind of like a ring that could detract from the legacy more than add to it, just as far as how great of a team up this has been?
Well, I think we're all just talking about how problematic this team is and how we're worried about the bench and the defense. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't characterize this as a cakewalk ring at all if we're criticizing this team
Mhm.
for having flaws.
Yeah, this is going to be harder than that Mickey Mouse ring, absolutely, than LeBron did last year.
The
Especially with
disrespect.
the East this year being, I think, is this a hot take to say that at the top it's better than the West?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's perfect. That's right on. The East is the new West.
Because
It's
at
the
the West,
'90s
I
all
only
over
see the
again.
Lakers and the Clippers really as championship contenders. But
Yeah.
the East, I think Philly,
Pacers.
Milwaukee, yeah, Boston, all those teams are really good.
Mm. I still got to put that down now for the Pacers to win the finals because it's gonna be looking extra good for you now. Those odds are gonna be higher now uh with James Harden going to Brooklyn. So I don't know. We might have to all three split that up before when we get off air or something. But what I was gonna say before we get on to our NFL picks for divisional round talk in the playoffs is that Houston low key might be sneaky because John Wall, Victor Oladipo, and DeMarcus Cousins there with Christian Wood. That's a lineup that I'd still like to see there with Depot, Wall, and Cousins because we saw how well Wall and Cousins worked out for the first couple games of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think at least fantasy wise, it's sneaky. I think John Wall and Victor Oladipo are definitely guys you
Play
should target because I
in
think,
tournament though, they can
yeah,
make it.
there's a lot of production there. I don't know, Brandon, about playing tournament because this team was already kind of bad with James Harden and you lost him. I get the vibes are bad, but the West is still really deep, and I think Houston has every incentive to be bad this season and kind of tank and get that next star in a loaded draft, right?
Yeah, it's facts too. And just DeMarcus said that Harden just from day one wasn't willing to buy in. So I think the sense for a lot of the guys, definitely in Houston and maybe even around the league, is that they might be better off. This could honestly be addition by subtraction. Just if the situation was as toxic as we're hearing from guys like Shams and Woj. So I think that's going to be a big thing to look out on, just how well they can gel as far as their chemistry.
Well,
Cade
yeah,
Cunningham in Houston. Let's get it.
that's all we have for your NBA news this week, and we took the entire almost close to an hour talking about that because it was just such a big trade involving so many teams with one of the top 10 players in the NBA moving there to Brooklyn and joining and forming another super team. But right on to the NFL. But before that, some news that we got with head coaching is the Jacksonville Jaguars are looking like they're going to hire Urban Meyer as their new head coach. And that's an ideal job there. Meyer going to the NFL with the Jacksonville Jaguars with the number one overall pick in Trevor Lawrence. You have to love that for the former Ohio State coach.
Yeah, Jacksonville, I love the future they're building. You got, I think, 2 first-round picks this year and next year because of the Jalen Ramsey trade. Trevor Lawrence coming in most likely, and as we've seen with the thing I love about Urban Meyer is he's never really had talented quarterbacks throughout his college career. I mean, the best one was probably what, Tim Tebow or Cardell Jones, but he's
Dwayne Haskins?
continuously Dwayne Haskins, and he's continuously built offenses that elevated these guys despite their talent limitations. So You give him a guy like Trevor Lawrence, I think he's going to build a great offense around him. And the Jags are going to be a team to watch in the AFC South.
Mm-hmm.
Dwayne Haskins isn't Trevor Lawrence. But this man still had 50 touchdowns, Darren. Don't just act like he's nothing,
Yeah,
man.
and I'm saying
Come on
that's
now.
because of Urban Meyer. Built a great offense around him with great receivers, a great scheme. He's
I
propping
don't
up
know,
these guys,
man.
but now he's
This guy
finally got a
was
guy with real talent in Trevor Lawrence. That's all I'm saying.
the
Right.
number 2 ranked 4th grader in his class.
Oh, God.
He was a prodigy. But they should be nice. I'm excited for them. I think Jags defense can come back too, hopefully, to the
Mhm.
level they have just with all those picks. And some of the guys they have on the edge are great too, it looks like, coming up.
Yeah, I have a hot take here, and not really a hot take. I don't know if it is. Maybe it's just a hypothetical that I want to happen. But what if, right? You're Urban Meyer, former Ohio State guy. Of course, Justin Fields was back in Georgia entering the transfer portal still. But what if you just traded down one pick and you gained another, future picks there for the Jets to get Trevor Lawrence? You move down and you take your Ohio State guy there and Justin Fields going to Jacksonville.
You know, I'm not an NFL scout, and I think that just comes down to how much better do you think Trevor Lawrence is than Justin Fields? Because if you are able to get a first round pick from the Jets in the next coming years, I think the Jets are going to be bad for the next couple of years. So I wouldn't rule that out.
Yeah, I like getting extra value too, just if you're not sure that's your guy. I think Trevor Lawrence is just a can't miss guy, but Justin Fields did out battle him when they had the top high school recruits. I think it's
Yeah.
called the top
And
12,
he
top
just
11
out-battled him in the
QBs.
college football playoffs, right? In the semifinal game. He threw 6 touchdowns and beat Trevor Lawrence. So
Yeah, and then he got targeted on that one play that pretty much took Clemson kind of out of the game defensively too. So just with his, I mean, obviously that's not something he can control, but his ability to make plays and, just to get out of the pocket is going to be something Jacksonville's going to have to really think about there if they want to go to 2.
but at the end of the day, if you think Trevor Lawrence is the can't miss guy, you just take him because
Yeah.
if you have that can't miss quarterback, you're set for the future.
Could be Andrew Luck RG3, but that's me in
And
hater mode, as the youngins like to say.
who knows, even if the Jets go with a quarterback, they could stick with Sam Darnold and then add a guy like Devontae Smith, because we saw that national championship performance, and my God.
I'm the biggest Sam Darnold fan in the
Monster.
world, but that's a fireable offense if you decide not to take a quarterback at 2, in my opinion. it's just Sam Darnold's not a bad I mean, he might be a bad quarterback, but like it's just time for both parties to move on. It's just like when
Yeah.
you're in a relationship, things you might be able to patch things over in the future, but it's just better to split your separate paths.
Okay. That's some great relationship advice there by our dating advice guru here, Darren Jung. We'll move on now to our divisional round playoff picks. We'll recap you with what happened last week. Darren and Garrick both hit on their picks for Baltimore to beat Tennessee 20-13. Cleveland, I'm the only one that hit that pick there, 48-37 for Baker Mayfield and the Browns. And Buffalo, I think we all took Buffalo, with Buffalo beating the Colts 27-24. Washington football team almost did it, but ultimately me and Garrick were wrong. Darren got that one 31-23 for Tom Brady and the Bucs. And the Rams, I said it last week that I wouldn't bet against them or bet against Russell Wilson, but I said they were going to win by 3, or if they were going to win, it was going to be 7 or less. And I was wrong there, but I said it was going to be a close game. The Rams won 30-20 in Seattle, and New Orleans took it easily, as we all agreed to, 21-9, if I'm correct. So now, divisional matchup. We'll start off with a wild card team in the AFC, and that's the Cleveland Browns against the Kansas City Chiefs. I think the Kansas City right here, right now, if I'm looking at this correctly, is favored at -10. So who do we have in this one, boys?
I mean, if we're going money line, I think you got to take Kansas City, right? I mean, this is the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl.
Oh, real quickly before we touch into this, I just want to tell the audience that Darren consulted me for some advice on that Rams and Seattle game, and we all took the under because it was looking that way with previous games this season. But of course, they went the over for that one time.
Of course. Thanks, Russell
The
Wilson, for throwing that.
disrespect.
Thanks, Russell Wilson, for throwing that pick six to definitely hit the over, because we all know it wasn't going to hit with Jared Goff playing quarterback. But thanks, Russell Wilson.
All right, back to
As for
Cleveland
this
and
game,
Tennessee.
I
Yeah.
don't know what to think of this game. The spread at -10, I'd be afraid to take the Chiefs, just because I think what was that stat? They're 1-6 against the spread the last 7 games of the season. So like
Yeah.
they've definitely let
But
teams hang in there.
in terms of just getting who wins this game.
Oh, I'm going with Chiefs, no question about it. I mean,
Oh,
they're the best team in the NFL still.
all right. How about you, Garrick?
Yeah, I think the Browns have the recipe to beat them, just running it down their throats every time, basically, and letting Baker, kind of be a field manager out there somewhat. But I'm going to have to go Chiefs too, just because I don't want to bet against Patrick Mahomes. I know I said that with Russ, but I think Patrick Mahomes is also just a different breed. So I think that
As Chase
offense is going to be
Claypool
too
said,
potent.
y'all are gonna get clapped, Cleveland.
I don't know about. We'll have
I
to
don't know about
see.
that.
OBJ believes in them, so there is a wide receiver that believes in them
I
out
just
there.
think
who's
if
accomplished
Cleveland goes
before.
down early, it's over, because they're not gonna be able to run the ball, and you're putting everything on Baker. It's gonna be rough.
Well,
I could see that, yeah.
I'm not betting against them. I didn't do it against it last week, and I'm taking the Browns to pull off the upset here against Kansas City. And because Kansas City in their last 7 games, before the Week 17 one where they, basically said, hey, we're going to rest everybody. They've been 1-score games, only 1-score victories for Kansas City. So with how the Browns are hot and the momentum, you just got to ride that. And I think we saw it last week with them being up 4 touchdowns over Pittsburgh. Of course, Patrick Mahomes and all those weapons are different. Le'Veon Bell there with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, if Hilaire's back. But I don't know. You just got to ride the hot team at the right time. And with Kansas City taking that week off, it either helps or hurts the team. And when you're playing against a team that's hot, I'm not going to bet against them. I really like what defensively the Browns did too against Pittsburgh within those first 2 quarters. So I'm going to have to ride the bandwagon and stick with the bright future Cleveland Browns.
And he got some balls. That's all I got to say. Because I think Andy Reid's, you know how great of a play caller Andy Reid is. I think he has a couple, he's been holding stuff back the whole regular season, and I think now he's taken out that full IHOP menu of plays, and he's just letting it rip.
Well,
face mask Andy Reid.
To be fair, if we're talking about play calling, and I mentioned this last week, Kevin Stefanski, even if he's not on the sideline, is not going to affect them, and that was true. And with Stefanski back now on the sideline, hopefully this weekend, I don't know, man. Cleveland, I'm on it. Cleveland.
Might be one of the rawest performances from Zoom I've ever seen in my life. The way Kevin Stefanski was calling those plays, man. He was a monster.
Well, yeah, the other AFC matchup now, we got -2.5 for the Buffalo Bills taking on the Baltimore Ravens. But, guys, you got to keep this in mind if you're betting. Weather might be a factor here with it possibly snowing in Buffalo and Lamar Jackson and that run game. Lamar could have his first ever snow game, but Lamar's legacy, I guess, was saved because he finally got his first playoff victory.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing I took away from that game against the Titans was how good their defense looked. I mean, they only allowed 13 points to a Titans team I think was top 5 in offense the whole season. So I think that was really impressive. But with that being said, I think I'm going to have to take Buffalo in this game just because as impressive as Baltimore's defense was, I wasn't impressed with their offense at all, considering the Titans have one of the worst defenses in the NFL, and they were struggling to move the ball the whole game. And I just think the way Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, that passing game's looking, Baltimore might go down early, and it's going to be hard to catch up.
This is what I will say. Historically speaking, snow hurts the passing game. And, we've seen a lot of people lose to snow. You never go in Russia when it's snowing. That's an old saying. And I think in the same sense,
before.
You're not a history buff. It's okay. Not all of us can be history buffs. But in the same sense, I need Lamar to win this game. Like you said, this is a legacy game, Brandon. This is what's going to define his future.
Yeah.
And this, I'm getting shades of Jake Paul versus Nate, honestly, right now. I'm taking the Ravens.
I'm taking Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills here. As Darren mentioned, we saw it with the Niners last season and where they couldn't pass the ball and it was all run game. This is the opposite. This is going to be Aaron Rodgers in that snow game that we saw a couple of weeks ago against Buffalo. Buffalo is going to flip the script and repeat that against Baltimore at home too. It's going to be the same shades of Josh Allen is not going to get affected by this weather. We know that Buffalo can't run the damn ball. So they're going to throw the damn ball. And Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, one of the best wide receiver quarterbacks duos I've ever seen in NFL history. And you got to ride that wave. I'm taking the Buffalo Bills to take on the Cleveland Browns in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one quarterback I trust in the snow, it'd probably be Josh Allen, just considering he probably has
He
the
leads
best
the
arm
team
in
in
the
rushing.
NFL, right? I mean, he's got a shotgun as a right arm, so.
More like a sniper rifle with that range.
Yeah, you're right, guys. A better comparison.
Okay, off to the NFC side now, and we got the Rams taking on the Packers after that upset in Seattle. And now we get the news that Jared Goff is your starter, taking on Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Who do we got here?
Call me crazy, but I like the Rams in this game just because we've seen Aaron Rodgers kind of choke when he's a big-time favorite in the playoffs.
Huh?
It's cold down there in Wisconsin. I think the Rams can definitely run the ball in this Packers defense because, I mean, I think this Packers defense is a little overrated, and I think the Rams could definitely move the ball on them. Mm-hmm. I think Jalen Ramsey's, if you're going to pick one guy to guard Devontae Adams, that's the guy I want. And if you could take him out of the game, I think their passing game is going to be really limited. So I think the Rams can go out and win this game. Also, Sean McVay is the best coach in the NFL now. I said it.
You know I love the Rams. I picked against them last week. I'm going to have to do it again because I'm taking Brandon's advice. I have to ride the hot hand. I know you don't like Aaron Rodgers, Brandon, but gosh dang it, this guy's 1 for 5.
Yeah.
He's too monstrous. I don't know who's stopping this offense, honestly, because I think the Chiefs and the Packers is what we're all expecting right at the end of the day. I know some people might say it's not. Some people might say it is. I know, Brandon, you had the Browns right now, so maybe for some people it isn't. But Packers just look too potent to me. I think potent offense is usually going to win you football games, especially because we reward offense a lot more than we reward defense.
Well, on this one, as I said, it's going to shock some people that regularly listen to this show. But I'm taking the Green Bay Packers in this one because Aaron Rodgers in big-time games, as I've mentioned, has choked. But this season, he's the front runner for the MVP. That touchdown to interception ratio is out of this world. And him and Devontae Adams is probably one of the best this season. I'll put him over Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs in terms of just automatic catch percentage, just by the look of the eyes, not by stats. It might be the other way for Buffalo, but just from looking at them, whenever he throws the ball in Devontae Adams' way, it's over basically. And I have some stats here for you. The one time that Jared Goff has faced the Green Bay Packers, that was that's for one game. That was back in 2018. And he threw for 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, nearly 300 yards. And now Aaron Rodgers has 5 games against the Rams, more experience against them, 291 yards, 2.2 touchdowns, and 0.6 interceptions average between them. I think that gets the job done. But I think it's going to be a closer game than what the spread is of -6.5. I think this might be lower than that. It's going to be a shootout is what I'm saying.
All I'm going to say is I love that Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers connection, but it's going to be a little tough with Aaron Donald in your face and Jalen Ramsey right there in Devontae's pocket.
You still got Jones, though, to run the ball.
Especially with David Bakhtiari out. They're all pro left tackle. I think Aaron Rodgers, he's not the athlete he used to be, so he's going to have to be on the move this game a lot, and we all know that Rams D-line can get after it.
Well, now we go over to Tampa and New Orleans. Third time we've seen these two teams face each other, and they always say how hard it is to beat a team for the third time, or how hard it is to face them for the third time. So -3 here for New Orleans, the victory in the Superdome here. And Tampa Bay, it's over 52, over under 52 points in this game. So we'll let Darren get that, and then Garrick next for their pick.
This is the game I've been the most torn on because the Saints really dealt with the Buccaneers pretty easily their first two matchups. But I'm going back to the well. I'm going to pick Tom Brady. I just think the Buccaneers are a completely different team since the beginning of the season. As we saw, they've just meshed so much better. I mean, Antonio Brown's fully integrated into the offense now. Seems like Tom Brady and Bruce Arians are on the same page. I think I saw Pro Football Focus had Tom Brady as the #1 ranked quarterback since week 12. So this is a team that's just on fire, and I'm just wasn't impressed that much from the Saints win against the Bears on Sunday. I don't know about you guys, but Drew Brees looked pretty pedestrian to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, the defense looked good, but it was Mitch Trubisky. So I think just the Bucs are the more talented team.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go with the same way, honestly, just because they say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, even though the end result is not what you want. And I
Yeah.
picked the Bucs a lot of times over the Saints. So I think I'm gonna have to stick with the Bucs, honestly, because I don't want to bet against the GOAT, and just got too many weapons. And AB just feels like he's due for a big game. He seems like he's really been chugging along lately, and getting some big gains here and there for them. But I could just see him totally tearing the lid off. And Gronk is always a threat, obviously, too. So just again, a lot to try to stop if you're the Saints.
Yeah. I think we got our first sweep here for picks, and I'm taking Tampa Bay as well. And that's because last week I shut down Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin didn't have a great game against the Washington football team, and Antonio Brown stepped up with that touchdown. And like Darren has said, Tom Brady, the best quarterback now since week 12. We saw that marvelous game he had against Detroit. Of course, I'm not comparing Detroit's defense to New Orleans, but I'm saying that he had a monster game there, and he's been just hot ever since that game. I got to take Tampa here, so I like Tampa and Green Bay in the NFC Championship round.
I'm going to add one more thing about Tampa.
Yeah.
So with Tampa, the biggest thing this whole season has been the pressure on Tom Brady, right? When Tom Brady's been pressured, he's gone from a great quarterback to a very below average. And we saw that on Wild Card Weekend against the Washington Redskins, who have I think it was the #2 ranked pass defense in the NFL, and their O-line handled Chase Young pretty easily. So I think if you could keep Brady healthy like they did last Sunday, he's going to pick this Saints defense apart.
Yeah. So that's our picks. We had our first sweep there, all in agreement with Tampa Bay and New Orleans. Man, championship weekend is going to be crazy, absolutely crazy the following week. I'm excited for that. Super Bowl, Tampa could potentially play in their own stadium for the Super Bowl, and that would be wild because they allow fans there, so you never know. But that has been this episode of the Shooters Only podcast. Right after this segment, make sure to stay tuned with a quick interview with Jordan, Darren Garrick's friend, the St. Mary's women's basketball team practice player there. So we'll give you some insight with what's going on in the women's team, as well as some NBA/Warriors talk. Again, before we get off every single week, our prediction or bold pick of the week, bold prediction of the week.
Go ahead.
Mahomes
Garrett.
is throwing for 450 yards.
Knowing how good Mahomes is that even bold at this point?
Tom Brady is throwing for 400 yards.
Okay, that's pretty bold. That's pretty bold, Garrett.
Those are my two. Those are my two in my head. I liked Mahomes doing that better, but since he said it, I didn't want to feel like I was wimping out on y'all.
After that Rams-Packers game, there are going to be serious questions about Aaron Rodgers' legacy and if he is the James Harden of the NFL with his playoff choking.
So that's
my bold prediction. Aaron Rodgers is going to be headlining First Take on Monday morning.
For the wrong reasons.
The wrong reasons.
Oh.
I'm here for
the wrong reasons. Okay.
Storylines.
Yeah.
We're here for it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, usually I'm always against Aaron Rodgers, but this year something in my gut's just telling me no, he's going to pull it off. That's why I'm taking Green Bay. But yeah, for my take of the week, you talked about Brady going for 450. How about I kind of co-sign with you here, but I'm going to go with one of their receivers. I'm going to go with, he's going to stick with his connection back in New England. And I say Rob Gronkowski has a 3-touchdown game against New Orleans.
Woo! I mean, we know
That's
Gronk
super
turns up
bold.
during playoff time, so.
Yeah.
I like that a lot, actually. That's very bold.
So make sure to follow us on Shooters Only Podcast on Instagram. Check out our social media handles that we mentioned before. And thank you for the support. We're getting our viewer count of listeners up every single week. And for Darren Jung and Garrett Garcia, I'm Brandon Cadiz.
All right, so now we got a really special guest here, our probably third guest, I think, of the Shooters Only podcast history. We got me and Garrick's old roommate, Jordan Garospe. How you doing, Jordan?
Hey, what's up? Shout out Shooters Only.
We appreciate it. One of our 25 weekly listeners here. So, Garrick, do you want to get right into some of the questions for our special guest?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Jordan. He's probably going to speak on this more, but he's a practice squad member here at St. Mary's, so he helps out the girls' team mostly, or the women's team rather. And I was just going to ask you, how has your view on basketball changed, would you say, or what do you appreciate more now, just being a practice squad member over these past 4 years?
Yeah, so coming in, obviously, not D1 size, D1 talent, right? So I still wanted to play basketball, coming into St. Mary's. And I had the opportunity because my sister's back home, her coach used to play here. And she's like, hey, do you want to come, and still, I know you played varsity in high school and stuff, and, I know you want to continue on. And she, reached out to the coach, was like, hey, you should come try practice squad. And it's been really cool because, not only am I getting to scrimmage, do 5-on-5 stuff, but just kind of picking the mind of the coach, Coach PT, and he's kind of seeing how they run their offense, some of the drills they do, and just kind of, thinking the basketball more of in the strategy way. It's kind of maybe possibly giving me a chance to coach later on AAU ball or high school ball. Is just kind of seeing how to slow down the game and how to analyze it that way. And still,
right. Time for the real questions, Jordan. How badly are you guys working them every day in practice?
It's a 50.
What's the spread? Over, under, 10.5 every scrimmage? 10.5 points you guys are winning by?
So I will say that depending on which guys show up, so usually there's, in the past it's been 5 guys like Ray. If Ray's there, we're probably winning, probably up by 5 or 10. Ray's
For the listeners, Ray is like a 6'6" point forward, do-it-all guy. He pretty much runs the rec center games.
Usually if Ray's there, we're up by a few. Ray's not there, it's more close. I'd say on the fast break, it's that's where we'll get most of my points, is just running the floor like that. But when they slow it down and really break it down, guarding Tacey, coming off screens and stuff like that, it's definitely not an easy task. And sometimes Sam Simons or even Maddie Holland, can
isn't your range from half court basically though with that mini ball? You're basically Kawhi, right? With how it fits in your hand. That the girls' ball is so small.
It was that's a good point. Coming in, it was an adjustment to shoot with that. It's definitely easier to dribble and stuff like that with a smaller ball, but no, I'd say shooting, you'd have to I really had to get used to that, having that getting used to that grip. But yeah, no, it's good. It's it goes back and forth. Yeah, but
that's great, Jordan. We're glad you're staying sharp for our intense 21 games at the park.
Oh no.
Anyways, we all know, if the viewers don't know, you're a huge Warriors fan. You're from the Bay Area. Me and Garrett give you a lot of crap for it all the time, but we want to ask you some questions about this current Warriors season because, I don't know, would you agree with this, Garrett, that they're probably one of the most interesting teams this season just because it's the first time seeing Steph have to carry a team by himself.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And just based on the guys they kind of had to bring in last minute, like a Kelly Oubre Jr. and just really retooling their bench, making sure Eric Pascal was a guy hopefully going forward for them, getting Nico Mannion late in the draft. So, what do you see if you had to pick if they were going to make the playoffs or not? What would you say as of right now? I know it's still early, but what do you think, Jordan?
Like, are you saying gun to his head? Are they making the
Yeah,
playoffs?
I'd say
for $100.
probably as a 7th or an 8th seed. We're definitely on the bubble. I think the main thing is Kelly Oubre needs to step it up. Been really struggling from the 3-point. His corner threes as well. Like Steph is doing good at distributing. Steph is doing his thing, dropping like 35, 36 a night, right? But we need another guy, like with the absence of Klay Thompson and the shooting there. Like Wiggins is sort of stepping it up, and I like to see kind of Wiggins starting to blossom, but really need Kelly Oubre to like either, since he's not hitting those, just at least attack the basket and needs to get us at least like 20. And yeah, since he's not making those threes, maybe he should just like not shoot the ball from 3-point unless it's like 1 second left.
We call that a Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want that for your team, Jordan. The thing I like about Kelly Oubre though is like at least he plays hard. Like sometimes I'll be watching the Warriors and it's like Andrew Wiggins, I think sometimes can be the real problem because he's just floating in and out of the games. And it's just frustrating because you see that talent there that made him the #1 overall pick. And he'll look like the best player on the floor sometimes, and other times it looks like he should have been sent to the G League or something.
Against
I'm
Toronto,
looking.
that was Canadian Jordan right there. He was.
I'm not gonna lie. Our co-host Brandon Cadiz has been on Andrew Wiggins' defense, and the last couple of games he's kind of been locking up a little bit. So I might have to concede that to Brandon. But I'm looking at their the Warriors team statistics right now. They're 6-5, 7th in the West, 23rd in offense, and 16th in defensive rating. And in my opinion, I think they're just begging for a trade, specifically for my guy Lou Williams as just another ball handler off the bench. What do you think about that?
Lou Williams. Who would we probably give up though for Lou? I mean, they got Lou Williams off the bench. I kind of see that. Who would you give up though? You probably give up like.
To make salaries match, maybe Kelly Oubre or Andrew Wiggins, either one of those guys. Just because it just seems like there's so much pressure on Steph as the only guy that can really handle the ball and create his own shot. And I think just like a guy like Lou Williams that could come off the bench and kind of, when Steph's not in, and keep the offense going would be super vital for the Warriors.
I kind of like that. A 2-guard front with Curry and Lou Williams. I don't know. At the same time, though, I like what I do like about Oubre. I don't want to like completely diss Oubre right now. Like he is doing some things good with like rebounding, and his defense is pretty good. But yeah, I mean, we just need. I think just ultimately, Warriors just need guys that can step it up and just score the basketball. Can't be, I mean, I like Wiseman starting to step it up. Curry's doing his thing, but we need, I guess, specifically in the, forward position, guys that can like hit the 3 ball and like actually fit into that offense and start producing numbers for us. Because that's where we're lacking the most.
You know who you're missing, Jordan? Possibly one of your favorite players of all time out there, Kevin Durant. And I wanted to ask you, we're going to get a little into this later in the episode too, just when we talk with Brandon also, but what do you think as far as, is this big 3 that just formed, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, better do you think than that Warriors team that was formed with KD, Draymond,
That's a good
Steph,
question,
and Klay?
Garrick. That's a good question.
Okay.
As a fan of, Kevin Durant, obviously, but also, as a Warriors fan
Jordan
too.
is one of the 5 people on planet Earth that's a fan of Kevin Durant, so we got to give that to him, right?
Okay.
I've never heard of a Kevin Durant stand before, but here we are, right?
I'll say this, in terms of pure talent and raw talent, like, yeah, this is probably one of the biggest 3 in like, in the history, right, of the game right here. Like you got a premier elite guard, Kyrie Irving, one of the best, arguably one of the best scorers, James Harden to ever, well, probably ever play the game, one of the best scorers. Another elite scorer, Kevin Durant. The thing about if you're thinking of this big three and you're comparing it to the Warriors, play, yeah, I would say that this big three is better. But what I'm concerned about is Kyrie Irving's head not being in the game of basketball. Why is this guy not he's sitting out, he's doing, and I know he's doing good things with like charity, things like that, but you can kind of manage both. You can be doing the charity stuff and all that, and then still show up to help your team out. And I don't know, it's just like Kyrie's just kind of shaky to me right now. So
you're saying they're more talented than the Warriors' big three?
I would say that, but in terms of trust and winning, like I would go with the Warriors' big three, because I don't know if Kyrie's going to show up and do his thing. Maybe now that Harden's there, he might, but I don't know. I just don't trust Kyrie right now, personally.
That's a good point you made about them being more talented. I just think Klay's the perfect third guy because he doesn't need the ball and he also plays defense. So that's probably why I take the Warriors over the current iteration of the Nets right now, if we're just comparing big threes.
Do you think they would need a guy like Draymond then Jordan, possibly, just to like sure that up? Because obviously he was the heart and soul of the Warriors. So in that sense, I think he gives you a lot of backbone. So maybe they could try to seek somebody out like that. Obviously, guys like
Are you
that
putting Draymond on the trade block?
I'm just saying, do you think you would need a guy like that maybe to really complete this team? Maybe Aaron Gordon or so, not to be disrespectful to Draymond, but also Julius Randle has been in conversations like that. Do you think that could be something that would help you possibly pick them even more so over the Warriors of past, or do you think it's still the Warriors?
You need a guy like Draymond Green or Marcus Smart, some guy that's like, heart. They call that the heart, right? Like Warriors, that's the heart and soul of the Warriors is Draymond Green. Without
it's like
Draymond,
Eric on our intramural team. It's the glue guy.
The glue guy.
He does all the dirty work.
Dennis Rodman, you need that guy. I mean, we could probably see the Nets right? They'll be scoring probably 110 a game, something like that, right? The total team points. But where it's going to struggle is your defense, right? You need that anchor, and Draymond brings that energy. Marcus Smart on the Celtics does the same thing, and that's why I'm trying to think. Lakers now got Montrezl Harrell. Montrezl Harrell is kind of like that, like a guy that's a hustler. And I think that in order, I see the Nets making for sure making the playoffs as like a number 2, number 1 seed, making it to the Eastern Conference Finals. But come in a 7-game series in the finals, possibly against the Lakers, if you don't have a glue guy, a guy that's going to push you, like I don't see a ring coming out of that. I think they need that. That's the one part they'll need, and that'll be interesting to see if someone on their team will step up to do that.
So DeAndre Jordan's not a glue guy. Is that what we're saying here? One of the most liked players in the NBA. It seems like this guy's friends with everyone.
I don't know. I don't see is DeAndre. Usually, I guess that could be their glue guy. That's a good point. He's I don't know.
I mean, here's my thing. You could find a glue guy on the buyout market. Glue guys are easy to find. James Harden are not easy to find. So I think they got a good core for now. All right, last question. Bringing you back to the Warriors. What are your first impressions of James Wiseman so far? Because me personally, I think he's looked really good. And if we were to redraft this 2020 draft after 7 games, I think I'd take him number 1. He's currently averaging 10 points, 6 rebounds. And I think the most surprising part is shooting 40% from 3 and also averaging around 2 blocks a game. So I was wondering as a Warriors fan, like, what are your expectations now for James Wiseman, like rest of the season? And are you happy with the pick?
Yeah, no, Wiseman is the future of our franchise after, Curry and all that. I like Wiseman's really stepping it up. He's still got some things to develop in his game. Specifically, I wanted to see him be more aggressive and continue to attack the rim and impose his size on, other defenders. But in terms of what he's been producing for us, rebounds, I could see him being like a solid, nightly double guy. I think had we done this redraft, Wiseman should have gone number 1. But yeah, no, I like what he's doing for us. Yeah.
I think I can respect
ahead,
it,
Garrett.
even though I like centers. I'm looking at Tyrese Halliburton and LaMelo Ball, honestly, going number 1 the way they're looking right now. But I really like Wiseman at 2. I think that's the perfect fit for him. I've said it before. I kind of think he's like DeAndre Ayton. He was just kind of the perfect guy to pick there. Granted, they had their needs at center basically. So I think that's really where he comes in, obviously. And he's been good so far. He's been better than I thought. I think even. And I
considering
was
he
somebody
only
who was
played
kind of high
3
on him.
games in college, and he's already looking like this. Like, especially the defense. Some of his blocks are just insane. And if he's going to be that anchor with Draymond down low, the Warriors might actually be a 4 seed in the next maybe like 5 years with that talent.
Oh yeah.
Clay comes back, they should be top 3, honestly, again. They're good enough to do it if Clay comes back, but that's the big thing now.
This team will be scary next year.
That was definitely the perfect fit for us. We needed a strong, especially with Marquise Chris being out now, right? And he was coming off the bench, possibly starting.
I've had enough with you and Brandon hyping up Marquise Chris as a key player. All right, just Marquise Chris being out has no effect on this current Warriors season. I'm sorry, Jordan. We're not using that as an excuse. Clay, we can use. We're not using Marquise Chris as an excuse.
Is he just young JaVale without the swag right now? Like without the clout of Shaqtin' a Fool, basically?
Warriors fans have been hyping up Marquise Chris as the next coming of a prime Blake Griffin. I swear to God.
We're gonna act like Marquise Chris right here wouldn't be averaging 10 and 6 right now if he was playing, coming off, giving us a solid. He'd be a solid relief for.
Marquise Chris is the Lakers' equivalent of Talen Horton-Tucker, just the player that's extremely overhyped by their fan base to nauseum.
This is getting disrespectful. This is getting blasphemous out here.
I'm just trying to play it both ways. I'm just trying to be fair both ways, all right?
Can't find many wings like him at 20 years old. That's all I'm saying.
All right, Jordan. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure.
Right. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, man.
And
stay safe.
We hope you come back on future episodes.
Yeah.
Especially if the Warriors make the play-in tournament. We'll definitely have to have your prediction there.
Let's hope Kelly Oubre starts hitting some threes and maybe that'll happen.
All right. Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks,
Peace,
guys.
man.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Shooters Only Pod, and stick with more to come down the line. Make sure to subscribe and follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.